to mute Shonda, everybody now. I'll
I
watch out.
did. And this meeting
Okay.
is being recorded. I have started recording.
All right. Well, we're going to just plow through. I'm still hearing some feedback. So again, if you please mute yourselves, that would be very helpful. So before we get started, let me introduce the 21st Century team to you. Most of you are old timers and you know the team, but there are some newcomers to the group. So team members, as I call your name, please, if you could just wave your hand. So take your camera off so everybody can see your beautiful faces and wave your hands at everybody. So we'll start with Latasha Ransom. All right, thank you, Latasha. Jamal Perry. I'm not sure if Jamal can be seen.
They may put it up, but it's all right.
Please mute yourselves, everybody. Please mute yourselves. Shonda Pooper. Say hello,
Hello,
Shonda.
everyone.
And Amy Bosch. All right. Thank you, everybody. So again, and I am Joyce Patterson, and we've attempted to mute everyone's microphone, but if it hasn't worked, please mute yourselves because we are getting a lot of noise, and so everyone needs to be able to hear clearly. And again, I've also asked you to turn off your camera so that we can help with bandwidth. So let's get started. Please mute yourselves. Shonda, can you not mute everybody again?
You just make sure you turn yours back on,
I
okay?
will. I will.
Everyone is muted.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So in light of COVID-19, we honestly kind of pondered how we would structure um, this training. And I know that typically we, tend to go through, the project director's hand and, and a lot of those things. But in light of COVID-19, we thought we would proceed a little differently and give you not to dismiss the project director's handbook because we still need to abide by it, but we decided to spend less time on the handbook and just kind of focus on things right now that can, give you some immediate help. And so further on in the down the agenda, you'll be hearing from some of your fellow project directors who have already begun their operating their 21st century programs for this new school year. So they'll be giving you some, tips on, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and some pitfalls to avoid. So I'm excited about hearing that, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you as well. So a couple of things. And I'm sorry, let me back up. And so these project directors, they've begun their programs both virtually and face to face. So hopefully they will give you a wide spectrum of how things have worked for them. And before I go on, let me mention also that if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, and our team members will do their best to answer questions for you. And if time allows, we'll also set aside some time to answer them verbally. And after the training ends, we'll stick around for a little while and also try to answer questions that you may have that may not have been answered during the training. And so earlier this week, I sent you a copy of the waiver, and this waiver came down from the U.S. Department of Education, and it honestly kind of goes against everything that we've been taught about 21st century and how it should operate and when it should operate. So the waiver just during the school year during COVID-19 will allow the 21st century grant to be operated during the regular school day. And again, it's only for the school year. And so every state has the opportunity to apply for the waiver. So we weren't given, an option. Molly Spearman said, we will be applying for this waiver. And so one of the things that we've had to do is post it publicly and get comments. So we've done that, and I think it closes on Tuesday. We've gotten some comments, mostly positive, saying yay. And of course, along with that came questions like, how would this work? If we have day teachers, they're also teaching the after school program, how would we separate their time and their salaries? How would they be paid? And that was one of the questions that everybody has. That was not any kind of guidance given on that from Department of Ed. So first of all, first step is getting approved to do the waiver. So once we close out our period of public announcement, then we will have to submit our application to the U.S. Department of Education. And in the meantime, determine, how we can still the supplement versus, supplant. And in the spirit of that, how this will all work. So I know that, it's a good thing, could be, but there are also some things that we have to work through. So I just kind of wanted to keep that communication channel open and let you know what was going on with the waiver and why it came about and how it came about. And then secondly, I sent you an email. I'm at the dog barking. Several dogs. I sent you an email about snacks in the USDA. And honestly, we as a team here at Department of Ed, we don't get into, how the programs feed the children. We just know that, you aren't allowed to use your 21st century funds to do so. And so before COVID hit, everything has been, working smoothly. There are some food banks that have been supplying food to, several programs and maybe other community organizations. And then primarily with the school districts, the food has been coming through their cafeteria. And so we had started to get questions about things that could possibly happen in light of the USDA and the summer feeding program, going beyond the summer and into December. And somehow that would affect the after school snacks, and that possibly, would not be allowed to be offered without some sort of charging, some sort of fee. So we thought we would get ahead of this because we had started to get questions from other programs and try to be proactive and, get information. So I, sent an email to my national rep for the 21st Century Grant. And so she had a meeting with USDA and, sent me the information that I shared with you. Well, we thought we were trying to give you some ideas for other resources, but it turns out the solution was actually worse than the problem. So we're trying to work through that. All we have is the information that we've given you. And I know we've had follow-up questions saying, this is confusing, I don't understand. And so again, in the spirit of, we were trying to be proactive and trying to help and give you some additional resources. It looks like was not that helpful, but we're still trying. So the bottom line is, if you aren't having any problems feeding your children, continue to do what you're doing. But if we noted that there were some districts, that are concerned about, whereas before they didn't have to worry about paying for feeding their children in the after school, with meals, snacks. But now it looks like there could be a cost associated with it. So here's what we should do right now. If you have a program and obviously this is for the programs that are meeting on site right now, possibly. So if you're having some like really difficult times with, we just don't have a way to feed our children, as extenuating circumstances, then by all means contact contact us, the program office here at the Department of Ed, and then we'll just have to try to work through it as best we can. And it might mean another call to DC. We're not sure. But in the meantime, I've also tried to set up a meeting with our Food and Nutrition office at Department of Ed here, because they operate our USDA grant, to try to get some local advice on how we should proceed. So kind of stay tuned for that. And I think right now that's all I have. I just kind of wanted to keep you abreast of what was going on. And, we always try to just keep our channels of communication open with you. And so with that, I'm going to ask Shonda um, to go through, and there's some information that she wants to share with you, and then she'll proceed through the agenda, and I'll come back towards the end um, with some more information for you. All right. Thanks, Shonda.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just want to let you know that um, as a 21st century program, it is still your responsibility to adhere to the 5 focus areas. I have my slideshow up. Joyce, if you don't mind letting me know if there's a problem with seeing my content here.
Okay, we can see it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, the agenda is such that updates, which Joyce has already provided. I'll go over your 5 focus areas and other important highlights. Those of you who have been in this meeting before, you do know what we're going to go over, but these are items that we must highlight just to ensure that you are meeting the objectives that you said you would do in your grant proposals. After that, we will have peer-to-peer presentations. First, Janice Sargent will be presenting what's working in Greenville at her after-school program. Then Boys and Girls Clubs of the Upstate, Ms. Nikki Kalk, will be presenting on their virtual programs. Then we'll have Donna Pageant, who I believe is there in person, or it could be hybrid, I'm not certain. I believe it's in person, all in person, as well as Amiko Hendricks of Urban League of the Upstate. She will also be presenting. Then we'll have a 5-minute break, and Melissa Myers, Director of Office of Auditing Services, will talk to us about auditing. And we'll have AIR, Ms. Samantha Snagowski and Femi Vance, question and answer, and then the adjournment. As you know, as having a 21st century learning grant, there are 5 focus areas that you must make objectives for your program. Those 5 areas are attendance, academics, behavior, family literacy, and sustainability. Now, granted, we do know that there are changes going on, and then the environment that we're in now, we kind of have to be flexible, but these 5 focus areas are still your objective for 21st century grants. First of all, attendance. In order to increase attendance and in order for students to want to be a part of your program, we ask that you create a safe and welcoming school environment to encourage the students to attend regularly. Providing an after-school climate that is fun, rewarding, challenging. Basically, it doesn't look like the regular school day. We know that some of your students are already under a lot of pressure because of COVID-19 and social distancing, but after school is still supposed to be fun and engaging and challenging. It's supposed to help increase their learning. We ask that you continue to monitor student recruitment, attendance, and retention in after school for the entire year. We need you to continue to take attendance, continue to update the data hub at least every month is how it's expected. We ask that you make sure that all students are updated in PowerSchool as being a part of your 21st century program of after school. All of those are requirements. Again, the after school program is supposed to have an academic impact. Those students that are struggling, there should be, some sort of help for those students so that they're increasing in their grades, so that they're increasing in their learning success. Academic support is to the after school program is to support academic achievement, success in grade level coursework through the after school homework support, direct instruction, individualized and small group tutoring, as well as other activities. So even in the era that we're in now with COVID-19, and we're not all able to be together as we normally would have been, we ask that you think outside of the box to ensure our students have learning success. Another purpose of the 21st Century Grant is to achieve academic growth to meet and exceed state and local standards. To improve in content areas such as reading, math, and science, improve subject grades, end of year tests, and MAP scores. It is also, the purpose is to create academic programming that is not a mirror image of the regular school day. So as I said, you got to think outside of the box, especially if your school is virtual right now. Thinking outside of the box with regard to family literacy, to enrichment programming, even if you continue to bring in guests, even if they have to record on YouTube or record a video and it's played back for those students. We don't expect the after school program to look exactly like the regular school day. Increasing social and behavior impact in students is another purpose of the 21st Century Learning Grant. We have 3 expectations in that regard. One is participation. By being a part of something different than regular school, by being a part of something different than what many of the students may see in their communities, whether it's a impoverished community, participation in the after-school program can help them socially and behavior-wise. Teaching respect for adults and other students, and appropriate communication. Many of your programs may have some character education, which is awesome in helping to improve the social and behavior impact in students. Family literacy is the other focus area of 21st Century Learning Grant. Again, you may have to think outside of the box in regard to family literacy. I know many of your programs had a parent night. So even if you have to continue a parent night virtually rather than getting together so that you have it with everyone, or if you have many parent nights or many family literacy programs where you're still able to be social distance, or, a lot of parents may be leery of being online for so long, of their student being online for so long. So, coming up with programs that would include the parent and the child so that, it's not just the child looking at the screen, the parent and child can be working together. Interactive literacy activities between parents and children, education for parents, facilitating children's learning, giving them assistance in this time. Adult literacy training, and training on age-appropriate education, early child care, preparing children for success in school, etc. So providing training to your parents with utilizing various virtual tools, all could be beneficial in your family literacy focus area. Sustainability, providing neighborhood community involvement through partner support. So I know a lot of programs are not allowing any strangers into schools, or, you know, if your program is virtual, it can be hard to do. You can still recruit partners to, like I said earlier, maybe provide a video, or doing some sort of community service project, something outside, anything that you can think outside of the box to help you with maintaining sustainability for your program. Please, if you come up with anything that is not necessarily in your grant proposal, contact your grant manager, you know, run things by us, keep us informed of the changes that are happening. We will be contacting all of our programs throughout the year to see what's happening, to find out, you know, kind of do a check-in to see how you're doing in these changing times. And we know that changes are occurring frequently. So we ask that you keep this office informed of all changes that are happening with your program and in your districts. Next, we'll be having some highlights from our handbook. One, the monitoring tool. Because we are unable to come into the schools and come in to see your programs, we will be doing a desktop review. Many of you have had our desktop reviews before, and it's pretty much a phone call. But our desktop reviews are going to be a little more intensified, so we'll be requiring more information from you. You'll be notified from your grant manager, of course, 2 weeks prior to your monitoring event. And you'll be given a list of required documents that you would have to send in to us that we can go over prior to your desktop monitoring review. And when that happens, we'll have enough to go on to complete our interview. So it'll still be an interview process and it'll still be on the phone, but you'll be required to submit a little more documentation to us beforehand in order for us to complete a monitoring tool and kind of gauge what it is you're doing in your after-school program. So the expectations are pretty much the same. We still expect you to keep in your binder, even though we may not be there to physically look at your binder, but we still expect you to maintain copies of your completed and approved budget and budget narrative, copies of amendments and any correspondence, copies of expenditure reports and receipts, or at least be able to get to it or to get a copy of it to us if required. Copies of evaluation reports, any grant-related correspondence, activity-related documentation, for instance, your family literacy programs that we mentioned, your meetings, whether it be via Zoom or virtual, or if they're in-house, your sign-in sheets, or even your attendance reports, registration forms, that type of activity documentation or grant-related documentation. We need you to make sure that you continue to generate and maintain that documentation, as well as copies of any purchasing documentation, your invoices. Same rules still apply. Other important documents: enrollment or registration forms, attendance sheets, staff timesheets. All those are important to be maintained. PARs, which are your personnel activity reports. Please be sure that any student expectation documents, number 3, family literacy plan and any planned events, sign-in sheets or attendance reports, staff development, MOAs. If you have any new partners, please be sure to get your MOAs. And please make sure you maintain a copy of your general ledger, that you keep that documentation. You get it at least quarterly, but if your program makes expenditure claims frequently, you want to stay on top of that. You want to know about what's available in your budget. So having a copy of your general ledger will help in that. We don't have a representative today for grants accounting. So they gave us a little information about the gaps of grants accounting processing system. With that, entry will be done by an individual at the subrecipient level with assigned roles. And it can only be possible after your budget has been approved by our office. So those of you who have not contacted your finance office, or those of you who have not done your budget allocation, please do so. And once it is approved, you can then start requesting expenditures. Again, entry is done through the finance tab, and the system will check your budget. That's why it's very important for you to know what you have in each category by getting a copy of your general ledger. Again, the entry will not be accepted if your budget is not available. Workflow to the assigned approving official at the subrecipient level, that's at your level, must be completed for approval before it goes to SCDE grant, finance office for payment approval. Payments are processed on Wednesday, and the cutoff for expenditure entry and approval for inclusion in the weekly payment is Friday at 5 p.m. most weeks, unless there's been a change that we don't know of. Tuesday morning, reports are run and figures prepared for the weekly cash draw. And on Wednesday, direct deposits are made and transfers are made between state agencies. Please reconcile your books. If you have entered an expenditure that was approved, the payment should be in your treasurer's office by the end of the next week. If you need any assistance for questions with regard to your budget and budget amendments and budget approvals, you would contact us, your grant manager. It says your program contact, that would be us. That would be me, Joyce, Latasha, Jamal, or Amy. Contact whomever your grant manager is if you have questions regarding your budget. Any question you have with regard to your expenditure entry, you need to send a screenshot from GAPS to grantsaccounting@ed.sc.gov. Okay, provide as much detail as possible in your question or in your email for any question related to expenditure entries. There's some training if you need help with grants accounting. If you need help with GAPS, there's some online video presentations that can be found on our website, www.ed.sc.gov/finance/grants accounting. Any questions that you may have, please enter it in the chat box. And if there are any questions that need to be addressed to our whole audience, we'll answer those at the end of presentations. Okay, financial pitfalls. Please be aware of all spending. Please be aware and make sure that you're spending your funds in accordance with the grant. Your responsibilities are to expend the grant funds in accordance with your approved budget and narrative. Okay? You must maintain separate accounts and records for each source of funds. Some districts may have more than one 21st century grant. Some CBOs may have more, or non-LEAs may have more than one 21st century grant. Each grant has to have its separate account and records. Okay. How do I know my expenditures are allowable? All expenditures must be in accordance with your approved budget. If it's not on your budget narrative, then you need to ask your grant manager, or at least let your grant manager know how you're going to be spending your funds differently and get approval prior to spending it outside of your approved budget. All expenditures must reflect the resources that are necessary and directly allocable. It must be reasonable for the performance of your project, must conform to any limitations or exclusions, and have a cost basis. So there must be some identification of the amount. For instance, in your budget, many of you, in fact, all of you, your approved budget narrative, we may have asked you for a complete formula for a particular item. For instance, if you're buying 10 computers, we asked for a formula that said 10 computers at $350 each. It must have a cost basis. All expenditures must be treated consistently. Okay. Must be characterized in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Many times we've noticed in some of the budgets, in gaps, a lot of programs are putting everything in the 100, or I mean in the 100 function code. However, your funds should be categorized in accordance to how you're going to spend it. 100 is instruction. The 100 function code is instruction. If you're only spending all of your funds in instruction only, then it's fine to keep everything in instruction. But if you're paying administrators, if you're paying finance people that are not associated with instruction, that should be in a separate function object code. Okay, and if you need help with that, in the back of your handbooks, which we will be providing under separate cover in a separate email, we do have copies of definitions for your function and object codes to help in putting those funds in the correct category. Next is expenditures should not be included as an item of cost in any other federally funded program. No supplanting, okay? If your funds are being expended or paid for using another grant, you can't also claim 21st century funds for that, okay? All grant activities, how do you know what project activities are allowable? And all grant activities have been approved by SCDE during the pre-award revision process. Any changes to these activities require SCDE approval. Many of you have received a survey, a COVID survey we called it, because we know that changes have to occur based on your district guidelines. We ask that you let us know what those changes are so that we can hold you accountable to that. Okay. We do know that you still have to operate your 21st century after school program, but we do realize that we have to be flexible because of changes due to the environment that we're in now. All changes that are handed down to you from your district or from your higher ups, you must talk to your grant manager. Let us know what's going on, and you have to get prior approval. Okay? Granted, like I said, we are being flexible because of the situation that we're in because of the pandemic, but we ask that you, as you find out of changes that are happening in your district or in your programs, you let us know what's happening. Please don't wait until after the changes are made. Let us know as they come down the pipeline. Joyce, did you want to add anything in there?
No, no,
Okay.
that's fine. You covered it.
All right, great. All grant awards are reimbursed on a, I'm sorry, all expenditures are reimbursed on a cost reimbursement basis. Basically, you have to spend the money before you can be reimbursed for it. You have to make sure you maintain all documentation for each expenditure report. That documentation could include invoices, receipts, timesheets, and other backups. But it must be maintained, and you be able to send it to us when we ask for it. Okay, so even if you don't keep it in your office or on your person, you must be able to get to it and send it to us as needed. Okay. Budget and program modifications and amendments. You must write to get approval to change your grant when there are changes to the scope of work, including the schools that you're serving and site locations. We know many changes are happening in your districts. We've had quite a few to call in when board meetings were happening to say, hey, our district is changing some things up. We've got schools that are combining. All of that you need to let us know ahead of time to get approval with regard to 21st Century Learning Grant. If there are changes to key staff would be your project directors, your authorized officials, your financial officials, all of that changes to key staff, you got to let us know. Okay. Transfer of funds. Like I mentioned earlier, we've had districts make changes and maybe the name of your school has changed. So you're transferring your funds from Happy Town School to ABC School, and it's just a name change, or it's a combination of two schools that have joined together. You still must write us to get approval to change your grant for those kinds of changes. If there are any costs that require approval, you got to let us know. Changes in your total award amount. Of course, you as a grantee cannot change your award amount. Any changes to your award amount would have to come through us. If you feel that you can't serve your students and you probably need to get less funds, or if you feel you have more students than you can serve with the award amount that you have, all of that you would still need to contact us. I can't say that that's going to be changing, but you know, any changes to your grant award amount, you would need to contact us. Any extension or contraction of grant award time frame. If you see, if there's an issue at your district and your grant needs to close a little earlier than expected, you have to contact us. So any changes to the operation of your program, you would need to contact us in writing to get prior approval. What should be included in a budget amendment request? One, we need to know the reason for the change. Okay, please provide lots of detail. Okay, to give justification and rationale for the need of the change. The change must be in keeping with the intent, goals, and objectives of the RFP, grant application, and grant award. Okay, so you would still try to meet the objectives that you said you were going to meet in your original grant proposal. The impact on the budget needs to also be included in your program modification. You need to let us know what is decreasing, what is increasing, why you have an increase in this particular category, and etc. Explain why funds are available and how you would like to redirect them. Okay, so it's not just a little blurb in gaps that says something like, we overclaimed in supplies, or we over budgeted in supplies. That's not enough to explain a budget amendment. Okay, so we need you to provide details. The reason for the change, the request must contain a compelling, detailed justification and rationale for the change. You send all program modification requests to your grant manager. Please, please, please maintain contact with your grant manager regarding all changes that are happening in your program. Please be aware that any reported expenditure that violates the terms, conditions, and assurances of the grant award, such as your over threshold changes, expenditures in unapproved line items, disallowed activities, they will be disallowed by us and we will request a refund. Expenditures that are disallowed would be something like purchasing t-shirts and clothes, screen printing on t-shirts, stuff like that. That's disallowed. Okay, and we would contact you and ask you to send a refund if you use grant funds for those expenses. Are there any questions? Again, please put your questions in the chat box, and any questions that needs to be addressed to everyone, or that I guess Joyce or any of the team members feel should be addressed to everyone, we will discuss those at the end of all presentations. With regard to your vendors and your partners, there are various organizations that might be able to help provide enrichment programming to your students. In this time of pandemic, everyone is doing things a little differently and trying to serve their customers in the best way that they possibly can. So we do have some approved vendors on our external organization profile. It's located on our website. If you know of any vendors that are really beneficial to you, that you feel could help others in your community or in your district or within South Carolina, we encourage you to ask them to apply to our external organization profile list, and it is on our website, ed.sc.gov. Okay. Next, we will have our peer-to-peer presentations, and the first presenter will be, what's happening here? Our first presenter will be Janice Sargent.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I hope that you've had a great start to this kind of crazy school year. I know probably just like us, you've been scrambling to try to figure out how exactly to change and adapt and implement your programs. And our program is in Greenville County. It's at Montague Elementary. It's the Montague Magic Initiative, and we call ourselves the MMI. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's been going on in Greenville County, but Greenville County came up with what they called a roadmap to students going back to school. And it involved several different stages or levels of students attending in-person school. And you know, they said they were going to do the plans based on the DHEC community spread report and how that was impacting the community. So we have a plan where it's all e-learning. We have a 1 day a week in person and 4 days of e-learning. We have 2 days a week in person with 3 days of e-learning. And then hopefully at some point, the goal is to get, you know, have 5 days in-person school, which may or may not happen this year. And they've also just recently implemented a new plan where the first graders are starting to phase in, and they're going to be coming 5 days a week. That started. Special ed programs as well. And then the next phase is going to be kindergarten. So it's kind of been an ongoing process for everybody in the school to figure out exactly, you know, what schedule we're going to be on and what ways we can impact our students and follow all safety protocol. So when we first got news of all the plans, I had a meeting with the admin to figure out exactly what the MMI would look like this year, what they wanted us to provide for our students, and how we could do everything and still maintain all the guidelines and regulations that were being imposed as far as safety, social distancing, and all of that. For Greenville County, also the principals have a lot of leeway in what their school is going to look like and which areas of the building that we are able to use or not use, and, you know, certain activities that will be allowed and that will not be allowed. So all that was important information to gather before we started trying to figure out how we were going to phase in our program, because we realized that would probably be the best thing to do, is phase in the program kind of to go along with the guidelines of Greenville County. Always in the past, we have invited students that were in our program, obviously in the prior years, to be part. So that's what we started with, is inviting our students that were in the program last year, seeing how many of them were actually enrolled in in-person school, and inviting those students, because we couldn't have a meeting with the parents, or they didn't even really want us to send home paperwork, because they don't want a lot of papers shuffling through different hands. There is a waiting period after papers are turned back in. We actually had to call our students to re-enroll them and to speak with the parents, which was a good thing, because we had a lot of communication with our parents in the beginning. So those were really important pieces, is how exactly are we going to re-enroll, you know, get the students into the program and tell them what's going on. And then we have a lot of students that had already selected to be virtual students, and they weren't coming in person at all. So how are we going to reach those students? That was another thing that we had to consider. So we have been bringing back our students, you know, weekly, adding more students as we were able to get in contact and get them enrolled. And again, maintaining all the distancing that we have to do. You know, our principal said, we only want y'all on the main floor of the school. At that time, when we first started, we couldn't even use the gym. So all these were challenges that we had to, you know, figure out what we were going to do. And thankfully, because we're in a Title I school, we're in a building, we have a lot of resources within the school, and we had a lot of staff that stepped forward and said, I will offer, you know, this activity, or I have expertise in this area, which was really great, because we found that with the small groups, the enrichment activities are very, very important as well. Also reaching out to our partners, and I started doing this actually last year when we started planning, because we could see the handwriting on the wall that they were not going to be allowing, if we were back in school, they were not going to allow any outside people into the building. So started reaching out to our partners and figuring out who could provide virtual instruction. Clemson University is our joint partner, the Department of Public Health Sciences, and we were fortunate enough that they have a grad student that's been working on that, and they're getting they're designing a program through an interactive app called Flipgrid, and we're implementing this through the parents so that they do Q&A, and we're putting up information that's pertinent to them as far as health and wellness. Actually have a psychiatrist who's going to be doing podcast for our families on the stress and anxiety being created through this whole pandemic and how it's impacting the younger children, and ways to cope with that. So those are some features that we're adding virtually as far as our partners that we feel are going to be very beneficial. Also, we are starting now to kind of do a hybrid program, in that our students that come to in-person school, right now they're 2 days a week except for first grade, and now they're 4 days a week. We provide them as much instruction as we can, or opportunity as we can when they're in the building, but we also have virtual instruction and support on the days that they are not there. And our students that aren't in the building at all, we're doing virtual instruction for them, primarily in math and reading, because we partner with our Title I department, and that we feel like the academic support virtually is what the kids really need, and they're really struggling. And also when the kids are in person, we get the daily reports of what they did or did not do on their e-learning days. So we're trying to provide support there, go over those things that they're not doing or missing or not understanding. Communication with parents is really important, because what I'm finding is a lot of the parents are reaching out to our program because they see us when we do dismissal, and we've tried to be very proactive in communicating with them. And so because they feel a little disconnected from the school right now, a lot of them are reaching out to us for answers. So we need to make sure that we're on top of that all the time, that we have the answers to their questions, and we know what's going on, and stay up to date with everything that's going on in the building. So those are some of the challenges that we've had, but it's working out. I mean, we're having to evolve and adapt and change as the school phases things in, and we have to just follow suit with that. And I think we've done a pretty good job of getting our enrollment exactly where it needs to be, and reaching as many students as we're able to reach right now. And as I anticipated, there were some, parents that were reluctant to have their children staying longer in the afternoons. But as the school is kind of opening up and bringing more students in for more days, we're finding the parents are really seeing this as a great source of support for them in all areas. And so that has been a positive with all of this. And I know sometimes it's easier to focus on all the negatives and the hardships that are going on, but I think there have been some positives for our staff that have really been obvious in working with the kids. And one of those things is that we're able to provide a lot of level 3 or small group instruction for the kids. And this is just so crucial right now with all the support that they need.
Janice, I have a question for you.
Okay, sure.
The person who has a question, will you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Mr. Lorman?
Sorry, it's unmuting me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, sorry. We require membership applications, and that was one of the things we were struggling with too, because we can't do a paper trail as well. So
Right.
when re-enrolling with parents, are you on the phone? Are you filling out like new paperwork on each member, or are you just getting like a verbal commitment that they're willing to enroll in the program?
Okay, if it was a student that had been in the program prior, then we are simply updating. I have 2 enrollment forms anyway. I have for the new students and for our returning students. So if it was a returning student, obviously it was a lot less, and we just updated that. For our new enrollees, we did that same form, but then I sent home a follow-up form with that student, and then we call them and go over that, so it doesn't take as long. But yes, because that's how our principal requested that we do it. He didn't want a lot of papers, shuffling back and forth. So that took a little time to do, but fortunately, our front office, our parent involvement coordinator, they were all willing to help, and several of them are on the, work in the afternoons as well. So that's been a big plus, but that was a challenge, a big challenge.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Are there any more questions while we're paused? Does anybody else have any questions that you've seen, Ms. Pooser?
And if so, this is Joyce. If so, if you don't mind, just holding your questions until the end. We have 3 more. For the sake of time, we have 3 more presenters. Thank you so much, Janice. And then if you'll just hang around afterwards as well, if there are any additional questions, we'll just open the floor up at that time. But thank you so much, Janice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, Janice.
You're quite welcome. So anyway, go ahead. No, I was just going to say thank you very much. And I just want everybody to concentrate on the positive and realize that more than ever, I think that our programs are so important to the support of our students and our families. And I'm sure all of you have gotten the same feedback of how much us just being in the building is helping them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Sargent. Next, we'll have Nikki Kalk from Boys and Girls Clubs of the Upstate.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Nikki, yes, we can hear you. If you'll turn your video on while you're speaking, we appreciate it.
So I have it turned on and I can see myself at the bottom of my screen. I
see you now. Yes.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Amy asked me to speak this morning predominantly about our Boys and Girls Club at Home distance program. And then a bit about how that distance program supported our return to in-person services. So as soon as things closed, we began working really quickly on what next. And we knew we wanted to do something fairly simple because our families were already expressing that they were a bit overwhelmed with the virtual school. And so what we came up with is BGC at Home. And this is our most recent BGC at Home activity matrix. It's 1 page, and we share it every 2 weeks via parent emails, our Facebook page, emails from our schools to students, and we also print and distribute these. So if you see here, what is nice about it is there's no internet required. We do have a few videos that our staff have created and a few virtual field trips or links to other virtual classes. But for the most part, there's no internet required. And even when we have a video, you see there's a written instruction. And all the activities are broken into our 4 core program areas here. You can see we ask everyone to also say our Boys and Girls Club code every day to keep them engaged a little bit and what our regular program was like when we were all together, and to read for 20 minutes a day, reminding them to get plenty of exercise, and share videos of us. So in addition to the activity matrix, the second part is a weekly call with our club staff. And so each week throughout the closure, our staff have connected with our families via a call, and that could be as simple as a telephone call, or video chat or Microsoft Teams sessions with groups. But each week we make contact with every family or attempt to do so. And then we document that with a call log. And on that call log, it has the student's name, their contact info, and the staff would document the method they were using for that call, along with the amount of time of the call. And then we're using those call logs to track attendance and participation in the program. I do want to point out that in addition to these activities throughout the summer, in addition to all these activities here, we provided our students with summer bridge activity books and grade level reading books, and we had them do 3 additional educational activity sheets throughout the summer. The call logs, we provided our staff, for the calls, we provided our staff with a script that they could use as a springboard. I mean, beginning with just simply a well check call, you know, how are y'all doing? Do you need anything? And then discussing the activities with them and mentoring the children through the activities, and during, you know, while virtual school was in session, offering them support with their schoolwork, assistance with their schoolwork over the calls. And so, you know, big successes with our BGC at Home program. We've always wanted to reach more students and do more outreach. And so with BGC at Home now, any kid can have access to what we do with our activity matrix. They don't have to be attending our regular program. So we're sharing this on our Facebook page, and anyone in our community can access the activity. So this is a picture of my son participating in a yoga session with BGC at Home, which I was excited about because he's not been able to attend our programs because we don't have one in his school district. Another big success was in late June, early July, we were able to distribute summer survival kits to all of our club members and see them in person when they came to pick these up. So and you can see there's the summer bridge workbook, a math journal, some of the grade level reading books. We provided printed schedules there, drawing art tablet, art supplies.
Awesome. So how are you taking attendance for the school year?
So for the school year, we have returned to in-person, as I'll speak a little bit more about later, at 10 of our 13 sites. So obviously we're doing that as we normally would. But for the virtual, the sites that are doing the virtual still, which is only, I think, 2 of our 21st century sites that are still, 3 of our 21st century sites that are still doing virtual. The same format, we're using the weekly call logs and tracking their participation via the call logs. And it's just an Excel sheet, and we're documenting, you know, the dates of the calls and the times, and, you know, confirming with their families that they are participating in the at-home activities.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, another success I would say is just lots of positive feedback and gratitude from our families for staying connected with them, you know, helping keep their kids active and engaged, supporting the virtual school. A lot of our families are grandparents that are raising the children, or that were caretaking for them while their parents were still working, and they were really struggling, you know, with a virtual school. And so they were grateful that our staff were there to talk them through it and, you know, connect them with teachers and whatnot. It helped keep us connected to our families and our schools. Another success, as I already mentioned, being able to share the at-home activities with the entire student bodies of the schools and making it available to our whole community on our Facebook page. And we plan to continue doing our BGC at Home program indefinitely now. We're just gonna keep on doing it so we can reach more and more kids with what we do, even if they don't have a Boys and Girls Club program at their school. Another success was just helping us learn to utilize new methods of communication with students and families, such as Microsoft Teams that we're using today, and Blooms. And so I would say the biggest challenge was being able to reach all the families weekly. You know, that was our goal. It didn't always happen. But how we overcame that was we just didn't give up. You know, we just kept trying, we kept hanging in there, and really being innovative persevering, trying to figure out, how to meet each family where they are with what method of communication was best with them, whether that was texting the parents to schedule a live call. We just hung in there and kept at it. And the kit delivery was a great opportunity for those that, from the time we began BGC at Home in early April, the few families that we weren't able to connect with, they showed up to get that kit. So we were able to see them, and we had them, when they picked up those kits, we had the parents sign an agreement that, in return for receiving that kit, they were going to be sure their kids participated and did activities in BGC at Home. And so transitioning back to in-person, we have a little bit about, I meant to tell a little bit about our programs at the beginning, but we operate 13 after-school Boys and Girls Clubs in Spartanburg and Cherokee counties, and 12 of those are 21st century sites. So here is our Boys and Girls Club Facebook page, you can see right now. And so this is one of our sites that's already reopened, and they're dyeing masks there, tie-dyeing their masks. We partnered with each school individually to reopen and follow whatever social distancing and safety measures they were using. And so I offer to all of you on the call today, you are welcome to go to our Facebook page here. It's Be Great SC, and use our schedule. We're happy to share it with you. We do ask if you use it, if you would please follow us and like us on Facebook. And so, the BGC at Home really did help make way for a smooth transition back to in-person. Again, maintaining those relationships with our school partners, our parents, our students, keeping our staff engaged. We even engaged our, frontline youth development staff through BGC at Home. We did furlough most of them for the length of the closure, but we, allowed them to come volunteer and still make some calls with the kids and help us with the distribution of the backpacks. Let's see here. I think that that's really all I had to share. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to email me. You can see here we use a Google Drive link to share it, and on our schedule you can have a link to our Facebook page here. Here's my email right here. You can feel free to email me with any questions, and the videos created by our staff are on our YouTube channel, but you have to have the links, I think, to find them. Did you, 21st Century folks, did you want to let people ask questions now, or do you want to keep moving for time's sake?
We're going to keep moving for time's sake. If you don't mind hanging around for a little bit afterwards, once everyone has presented, all of the information has presented, we'll open the floor for questions. So thank you so much for sharing what's working with Boys and Girls Club of the Upstate, as well as your challenges, and for actually helping be a peer support. So thank you so much. Next up, we have Donna Paget.
Good morning.
Good morning, Donna.
Can you
If you'll turn your video on while you present, if you don't mind, thank you so much.
I've got it on. I don't know.
It's on. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Shonda, for asking me. I hope everyone's doing well all this time. Lexington School District 3, we're in Batesburg, Leesville, and we have two programs at our primary school and our elementary school. And once our district decided on the reopening plans for our school, I met with our school administrators to find out and work with them on the best way that we could operate with our programs based on the district guidelines. Basically, for our elementary and primary schools, our district gave parents two choices, in person 5 days a week or virtual. And so what we did was we basically, the children that come that are in person, they are called prides in their classroom. When our students arrive in the mornings, they go straight to their homeroom and they stay there all day. So our students, our related arts, and they all push into the classrooms. So when I met with administrators, they did not want the children traveling. And that's just mainly because of the contact tracing procedures that we have in our district. So our after-school staff, we push into these classrooms every day. We're still meeting Monday through Thursday. And what we do is the same staff member goes into the same classroom every day and works with the students that have been identified by their MAP testing in reading levels from our school administrator and the day school teachers. So we push into those classrooms and we work with students on reading. And that was determined by our administrators that was the focus area that they wanted us to work on, that our students were struggling with the most. So we are using the curriculum, the Faunus and Pinnell curriculum, the level literacy, and we go in and we work in small groups and students individual, and every day we work on phonics and sounds and high frequency words, and we are seeing really good positive response from that, from the teachers and from parents. We notified parents in the beginning that their students were identified, to be in our program, and we had really good response from the parents. We called, made contact with them. They appreciated, us working with their students. The students are very engaged, and they like the small group and individual attention and working with that. Students are given packages every week, take-home packages that's based on the strategies and what we've worked with them and what we will be working with them for them to use at home and to work on at home. Our primary school, the children are also, we use a lot of manipulatives with them and just trying to help them what they miss with the reading. We work with them on those things, and we've had really good response with the students, and like I said, with the students and the teachers. Every day, we have to write down exactly who all we work with for the contact tracing with our school, and hopefully we'll be able to open back up as normal soon. But right now we're just trying to follow our district guidelines we have to wear masks, and we just try to do the best we can with the areas that we have.
Thank you. Is that all you got for us, Donna?
Yes, I think so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. We appreciate it. We'll hold questions to the end because we want to try and get everyone in. We're pushed a little bit late. I think my portion ran over about 15 minutes. So next we'll have Miss Amiko Hendricks.
Good morning. Can you see me? I see myself, but can you see me?
I can see you right now. Thank you.
Okay, good. I will make mine short since we are on the time crunch. My name is Amiko Hendricks. I am with the Urban League of the Upstate, and we have 2 schools that we do in Union County. One's an elementary and one's middle. Like most of you, we started with virtual back in March, and we continue with our summer program doing virtual and now. I heard people asking about how do we get our applications out? Well, our application has always been now via email, and they fill it out and they send it back to us via email. The school itself, the school district itself is running 4 days a week in person, but an AB schedule. And on Fridays, they have e-learning. So the district in the Urban League has decided to do the first semester virtual. And then starting in January, we will go in person. With us going virtual, we start at 3 o'clock. So the kids who are in school that day are able to get home in time to get on with us virtually. During the 2:30 to 3 o'clock time frame, our drivers deliver daily packages and snack to their homes. So the kids get all their supplies they need for that week, as well as snack delivered to them daily, Monday through Thursday when we operate. We offer, during our virtual, we do STEM activities with them online, tutoring, homework help. We have math club, science club. We try to keep those going. We do virtual field trip tours. We have a group called Crump Cardio who we've partnered with, and they come and do exercise with them on YouTube and Facebook, not face-to-face, but virtually on our Zoom that we have with the students. So most of the stuff everybody else has said, we kind of do as well. So I won't prolong today, but if you have any questions about what we do, you can always reach me at the Urban League or ask me any questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hendricks. So again, Donna and Ms. Hendricks, they are face-to-face, practicing social distancing and adhering to district guidelines, I believe. Yes. So if you have questions for them, please hold your questions until the end and we will address them at that time. Next, we'll have Ms. Melissa Myers, who is going to talk to us about auditing services. Because I went over a little bit, we're going to forego a break right now and give Melissa the opportunity to speak and talk to us at her leisure. Maybe after that, we'll take a break before Samantha comes on. Thank you. Melissa, are you there? She's there. I can't hear you though, Melissa.
Unmute yourself, Melissa.
That might work. That's
yes.
Every time I'm beginning to unmute myself.
Thank you.
Hope everyone is doing well today, and you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. So I have a few topics to speak with you about on today. Okay, here's my agenda topics for today. I'll be speaking with you some on 2 CFR Part 200, which is commonly known as Uniform Grant Guidance, which is a set of federal regulations. I will speak to you also about the annual request for information that comes from my office, which is the Office of Auditing Services. We will speak about some of the audits that are performed in our office, adequate supporting documentation that should be maintained at all times, and what we will be looking for during the course of an audit, some common audit findings and results of audits, indirect costs, and then I'm going to give you some resources also. So the first topic is on 2 CFR Part 200, and again, it's the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. It's commonly referred to as the Uniform Grant Guidance, or the UGG. In that guidance, it states that non-federal entities that expend $750,000 or more in federal funds are required to have a single audit performed each year. And a single audit is a combination of a financial statement audit and then a deeper dive into the federal awards that an entity may have. Also, under 2 CFR Part 200, there are certain procedures that are required to be written for the non-federal program entities. Some of these procedures are, you must have written procedures for determining the allowability of costs in accordance with federal cost principles and the terms and conditions of the federal award. So we will look to see if you have written procedures that say what you're doing, what steps are you taking in your entity to ensure that what you are expending for the federal awards are truly an allowable expense. Also, the guidance requires written procedures for cash management or the timely request for reimbursements of expenditures. And here's where we were looking to see the SCDE requires that you make quarterly drawdowns. So we will look for written procedures that actually indicate that you are ensuring that you are reimbursing expenditures at least quarterly. The UGG also states that there must be documented procedures for procurement which reflect federal, state, and local laws and regulations. So we will ask you for your actual procurement procedures or your procurement policy during the course of an audit because, again, it's required by UGG. Also, you must have written standards of conduct that covers conflicts of interest and for governing the performance of its employees engaged in the selection, award, and administration of contracts. So again, that's another policy we will look for. This will more than likely be in your procurement office if you have a separate procurement office or your finance office, whoever is engaged with awarding contracts. We must see written standards of conduct and a conflict of interest policy. You also must disclose in writing in a timely manner any violations of federal criminal law involving bribery or gratuity violations that potentially affect the federal award. So if you know you have violated a federal crime, we expect you to tell us that and give us something in writing about such violations. Also, it states that an official authorized to legally bind the non-federal entity must certify on annual and final fiscal reports or vouchers requesting payment that says, by signing this report, I certify the best of my knowledge and belief that that report is true, complete, and accurate, and the expenditures, disbursements, and cash receipts are for the purposes and objectives set forth in the terms and conditions of the federal award. And then pay attention to the part that's noted in red. It also states that I am aware that any false, fictitious, or fraudulent information or the omission of any material fact may subject me to criminal, civil, or administrative penalties for fraud, false statements, false claims, or otherwise. So if you're the ones who's actually responsible for signing off on the expenditure claim reports, make sure that you pay attention to what this certification statement says and that by signing off that you are truly sure that to the best of your knowledge it is a true report, is complete and accurate. If not, then you could be civil liable for criminal and civil and any other penalties. Annual request for information. If you are a non-LEA, every year our office will send out a request for you to complete a federal program questionnaire. That questionnaire is like an internal control questionnaire that we use in our risk assessment process. And also in that same letter, we ask you to submit to us your annual audit report. And again, as I stated earlier, if you expended $750,000 or more in federal awards, that audit report that you will be sending to us will be a single audit report. If you did not meet that threshold for federal awards, then we still will be looking for, your financial statement audit report. If for some reason your entity did not have an audit completed, then we will ask for you to send us your year-end financial statements and IRS Form 990, bank statements, or a copy of your general ledger. if you are in LEA, every year your annual audit reports are due to our office normally by December 1st, but it's been actually changing that deadline for this year. But annual audit report, if you expended $750,000 or more in federal awards, again, that will be a single audit report. If it's less than $750,000, it is a financial statement audit report. And for the districts online, if you have not yet been made aware, due to COVID and the Office of Management and Budget not yet releasing any audit guidance on how to test COVID-related programs, the audit deadline for the very first time in history has been moved from December 1st until January 15th. So LEAs for this year, your audit report is not due until January 15th, when normally is due on December 1st. Now, the types of audits that we perform specifically in our office, we perform pre-award audits and limited scope audits. And if you have received this award, you're probably familiar with our pre-award audit process because you probably had one conducted. But for our pre-award audits, if you are a new or existing subrecipient of a competitive grant award and you have scored high enough to possibly receive the grant, then we will perform a pre-award audit on the entity. There's a pre-award questionnaire that's embedded in the RFP that all applicants already complete. And on that questionnaire, also the last page, it shows required written policies and procedures that we need in other documentation. So once we actually do the pre-award audit itself, we review the questionnaire, review the responses to the questionnaire. We know if there's anything that's an internal control weakness or anything that we might have to ask clarification of you concerning. We ask for your written policies and procedures and controls. And if you already have a 21st Century grant from us, we ask for documentation that you maintain for a current 21st Century grant. If you did not have a 21st Century grant but had other grants awarded by the SCDE, then instead of the 21st Century grant, we would ask for documentation for a current grant that you maintain. And with that review, we're ensuring that we can tell that you expended funds on allowable procedures. We're just want to see how you're maintaining your documentation and performing a cursory review, but still looking for, again, allowable expenditures where expenditures incurred during the period of performance, etc. We also have limited scope audits that we prepare, and this is when we use a risk-based approach to determine which subrecipients will be selected for these limited scope audits. And then also a program office can request at any time for us to perform a limited scope audit on an entity. The objective of the audit is to determine whether the entity's use of the grant funds were allowable, necessary, reasonable, and allocable based upon the grant award agreement and state and federal laws and regulations. A limited scope audit could be a desk audit, or it could be an on-site audit. A desk audit is like I said, is performed at the SCD office or right now in our homes. The entity is asked to submit written policies and procedures, general ledger, and documentation to support a sample of expenditures. If we determine that we're going to do an on-site audit instead, we're going to actually go physically to your location to conduct the audit. Prior to the visit, you will be asked to submit written policies and procedures and your general ledger. And once on site, we will ask you for additional documentation so that we can meet our audit objectives. We do give you advance notice of an audit, and with that engagement letter, we will tell you the audit period, the dates of the visit, and what specific documentation that's being requested at that time. And of course, while we're performing an audit, we may find it necessary to request additional documentation that was not initially included in our engagement letter. So what do I mean by adequate supporting documentation? If the claim is for payroll and employee benefits, we expect that you have maintained and properly completed timesheets personnel activity reports or PARs, semi-annual certifications, payroll registers, labor history reports, pay stubs, salary agreements, job description, and a documentation of the benefit rate for each type of benefit. And I know we have some newcomers on here, so I'll just briefly talk about the PARs and the semi-annual certifications. If you have any employees who are being paid by a federal grant, they're required to complete either the semi-annual certification or the PAR. If an employee works solely on one federal program, then every 6 months they have to certify in writing that they only worked on that one federal program. Say, for instance, if I worked on the 21st Century program, then I would say, I, Melissa Meyer, certify that I worked solely on the 21st Century program from January 1st through June 30th. And then it would have to be signed, be signed by my, signed by me and then signed by my supervisor.
Melissa, quick question.
Yes.
Quick question with regard to that certification. Does that include all day long, even if, for instance, it's a teacher who may be paid Title I throughout the day and then in the afternoon, 21st Century only? Do they need to specify on that certification a time frame, maybe? Not just the date time frame, but from the hours of from hours of 2 to 6 or something like that, whichever it is?
Yes, in the situation you just explained, yes. They should differentiate between the time period they're doing the different jobs. Good question.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Because as your example is like the after school time is different. So talk about the personnel activity report or the PAR. So this would be like more so if it's during the regular school day, they're working with separate job functions. Then monthly, they have to complete a PAR that shows how they're spreading out their time throughout the day. Can I think of an example? Probably not a school example, but I can think of like an attorney, possibly like at the State Department themselves. We have an attorney who works on special ed activities, and then the attorney also say they work for 21st Century activities also. So they should have a monthly PAR that will show for each day how they split their time between 21st Century and Title I. So I hope that's clear. If not, feel free to ask questions. Okay. If the supporting documentation is for purchased services, then we will look for contracts. The contract should have a period of performance that shows the actual dates that the work is to be performed, a detailed description of services to be rendered, the contract amount or payment terms, authorized signatures, invoices to support payments made, and timesheets. So this is for purchase services, someone who is not an employee of yours, but is providing services to you. This is a purchase service, and this is the type of adequate supporting documentation that should be used. For supplies that you're ordering, we will expect to see purchase orders, requisitions, invoices or receipts, goods receipt, and packing slips. So this is what you should make sure you maintain for supplies. And some of the common audit findings that we found during audits, which really this list really does not change from year to year, but we see issues with the lack of required documentation to support personnel salary costs, and this means we're not seeing the certifications and the PARs that should be maintained. In some cases, we're not seeing timesheets for hourly employees, or if we do see the documentation, it might not have the proper approvals, signatures on them. We've seen timesheets that's miscalculated. So all those type stuff about lack of required documentation to support personnel costs. Also, we have noted where supporting documentation does not adequately support non-personnel costs submitted for expenditure reimbursements. So that means you could be claiming for $1,000, but your documentation only equals $500. So it's not equal. We've noted where expenditures are made for unallowable activities. I think Shonda mentioned earlier about the allowable costs in your budget. So make sure you're following the allowable costs that's listed in the budget or listed in the program requirements in the RFP, whatever 21st century guidelines that you might have. Also, we've noticed failure to adhere to the approved budget, and Shonda did a great job touching on this earlier. Also, because when we do these audits, we do look at the budget to see what has been approved. And we have seen instances where entities do something that's not in line with the budget, and they have not gotten the proper approvals or the proper budget amendments for the program office. And if we note these issues, you could possibly have to repay money back that's been reimbursed to you. We note expenditure reports submitted for reimbursement before expenditures were both incurred and paid, which means you're claiming for an expenditure that's in advance of spending, which is not allowed. We've noted inadequate internal controls over equipment purchased with grant funds. We've noted that the required written procedures under 2 CFR Part 200 are not present, or they omit the required language. And we've seen where expenditures have been incurred and paid outside of the period of availability. In other words, expenditures have been sought for reimbursement for expenses that were made prior to the effective date of the grant or after the grant period ended. You should only be claiming expenditures during that period of availability of the grant, not before, not after. If you did have any pre-award costs should be approved or must be approved in advance by the program office. So what happens once we go out and perform these audits and we note deficiencies? Well, first we would ask for a corrective action plan for any finding that has been noted, and the corrective action plan should state the corrective action itself. It should state the name of the responsible party who is responsible for implementing the corrective action and an anticipated completion date of whatever the noted actions are. Again, I said earlier, you could be required to repay funds. It's possible that if the audit report becomes public, that it could be a negative press coverage of the audit. You could possibly report it in the federal awardee performance and integrity information system. You could be possibly listed as being suspended or barred from receiving federal funds. And depending on how significant the issues are, you could possibly turn over to SLED and or the Inspector General's Office of the U.S. Department of Education. So just a few of the our most recent audit findings that we've had. In June of this year, we issued a final audit report to a non-LEA that was awarded a 21st century grant to operate multiple sites. We found several instances where the entity did not comply with the grant award agreement and federal and state laws and regulations. And as a result, we requested reimbursement in the amount of $45,440.81 from this particular entity this past June. Audit from last year, September 2019, we issued a final audit report to a non-LEA that was awarded 21st century grant funds, again, to operate at multiple sites. We found several instances where the entity sought reimbursement for charges that were unallowable, inadequately documented, unnecessary, unreasonable, and unallocable. And as a result, we requested reimbursement in the amount of $255,139.26 from this particular entity. In April 2018, we issued another final audit report, and we found similar instances as I discussed previously with this entity, and this audit resulted in the requested reimbursement amount of $47,022.35. So these are like some recent audits that our office did and findings that we had. So it's true, not trying to scare you, but make sure that you do have your adequate documentation on hand, because if you are audited and we don't see the adequate documentation or find that you did not expend funds in accordance to the budget, we will request that money back. This next one is not a 21st century audit, but this is a school district audit maybe about 3 years ago for this one for a CERDEP program. And we found that the district charged unallowable, unnecessary, and unreasonable purchases of $176,922.79 to the program. And this school district was requested to reimburse us that amount of money. And we also questioned an additional cost of $16,218.06. Now, the CERDEP program is a program for preschoolers, 4-year-olds. And when we conducted this audit, we saw that they were purchasing things like adult tricycles and, decorations. And this was elevated all the way up to SLED. I know the program director was indicted, but I'm not sure of what has happened since the program director was indicted. And this is one more. And I think this is an older one. I think, Shonda, you might have helped work on this one. But this is an elementary school, 21st century again, charged $65,523 of unallowable and $139,741 of unsupported costs to its 21st century grant. The unallowable costs consisted of computer purchases, erroneously charged the grant more than once, salaries paid to employees who did not even work on the grant, expenditures for an event that occurred before the start of the program. In other words, an unallowable pre-award costs, unallowable charges for food, unsupported costs included payroll charges that were not supported by PARS, undocumented charges for a field trip, and admission fees. So, and this entity, this one actually went all the way up to the Office of Inspector General with this audit. So now to some better news. Talk about indirect costs. And what are indirect costs? Indirect costs are those expenses of doing business that are not readily identifiable with the activities of a grant or contract, but nevertheless are incurred for a joint business. And some examples of indirect costs include accounting, auditing, budgeting, payroll, human resources, and purchasing, unless you have someone that's designated to do accounting, auditing, or any of these functions just for your program. If not, then these are examples of indirect costs. An entity may charge indirect costs to a federal award by use of a negotiated indirect cost rate. All indirect costs are captured in a pool of costs and then divided by the total direct cost of the entity to determine a rate. That rate is then applied to a base, and your base could be your direct labor or any other modified total cost, and that's used to allocate the indirect cost to all programs. Now, you cannot double dip, which means you cannot charge the same cost as direct costs, but then turn around and include them in the pool as indirect costs, because that is unallowable, and that's something else that you will require payback if that's determined that you're double dipping. We have delegated authority from the USDE to negotiate indirect cost rates for LEAs, and unrestricted and restricted indirect cost rates are calculated annual based upon financial information in the annual audit report that's normally due by December 1st, but again, it says January 15th this year. And the restricted rate is applied to all grants with the supplement not supplant clause. The 21st century program does have that supplement not supplant clause. So the restricted rate is what you will apply to the 21st century grant. An entity must have its own indirect cost rate before it charges indirect costs to a federal award. Some years ago now, subrecipients were just using their partner indirect cost rate, but that's no longer allowed under 2 CFR Part 200. So if an entity does not have a restricted rate from a cognizant agency and plans to charge indirect costs during, and that should say fiscal year 2021, an authorized entity official must request a rate from our office to use on the grants that's been awarded by the SCDE. And we have received several requests. Just keep that in mind. If you think you want to charge indirect costs, school districts, of course, your rates have already been calculated for you. But for non-LEA, you must contact us if you want to claim indirect costs. And while 2 CFR Part 200 does discuss a 10% de minimis rate, that rate does not apply to grants with the supplement not supplant clause. And again, the supplement not supplant clause is applicable to the 21st century program. If you would like to have us negotiate a restricted indirect cost rate for you, the information that you would submit includes your financial statements, general ledger, your org chart, schedule of total funding, the IRS Form 990, a chart of accounts, and listing of equipment purchased during the fiscal year. Once the information is received, we will work with you to get questions answered and to exclude unallowable costs and remove specific costs. For example, equipment and terminal leave or unused leave payouts are examples of some items have to be excluded from the pool. We'll ask you some questions to make sure we are excluding the correct things, and then we will calculate a rate for you. And this is just a list of resources that are SCDE funding manual, financial accounting handbook. The guidelines for retaining documentation to support expenditures is actually being currently updated. So we should be sending a new memo to the program offices soon for you all to share with your subrecipients. And subrecipient risk assessment procedures, there's a link there for that also. So do I take questions now, Shonda, or wait till the questions all the way at the end?
I'm sorry, I was talking. Yeah, Melissa, you can go ahead and take questions now because, you're not necessarily a project director, so you don't have to stay till the end.
Thank you.
So if there's anyone who has any questions, please raise your hand on the same bar where your mute button and your video button is. If you'll raise your hand, Melissa can acknowledge you.
Hey, Melissa, this is Joyce. I have a question. I see that someone put in the chat box if you could send a copy of your PowerPoint presentation. And if you don't mind, just send it to us and we can send it out to all the project directors if that's okay.
Yep, I will do.
And then secondly, going back to indirect cost, but also costs that are like, the lights, air, heat, would those things also be considered indirect cost?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I see Lauren raised her hand and put it down. I think you might have asked her a question.
Yes, she answered my question. I was requesting the PowerPoint link for my finance approver so she could go over this information.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We did have someone ask if there's a particular form for the certification or PARS.
We have samples on our website, and I can send those examples to you as well when I send the PowerPoint.
Thank you so much. Is there any other questions? Would someone else like to raise their hand if they have a question for Ms. Myers? Okay. I don't see any other questions.
All right. Thank you. And I'll send you the PowerPoint.
Wonderful. We'll send that out in a separate email to ensure everyone who is in attendance today can get a copy of it. Okay. We have a question from Mr. Funny. If you'll unmute yourself. Yes.
I did left a message in the chat box, but it didn't get addressed. So my question has to do with timesheets. And if, we have an electronic timesheet system where our employees submit their timesheets and we approve them as well. Do we need to have something else, such as a written timesheet signed by the supervisor?
So yes, what kind of controls do you actually have an electronic timesheet? Is it still being approved somewhere in the system
Yes, ma'am.
where we can verify it doing an audit?
Well, we have, through the payroll system. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, if you mind send it to me after this meeting so we can review it and make sure. But I think as long as we see that it's going through some kind of approval process, it'll be fine.
Okay.
And my
Right.
email address is on the slides.
Very good. Thank you.
Let me make sure I have listed all the questions that were sent to me, Melissa.
Okay.
I'm actually going up through it now. One, is there a specific format for a PAR? We've answered that. And the timesheet, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. I also had a question about rollover funds from last year. I don't think that pertains to you. And that's something we can answer at the end of the program. I mean, at the end of our training here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Mr. Funny, I see your hand is still raised. Do you still have a question or? All right. Thank you all very much. Joyce?
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and give another break, a break or no?
I think we're good. Let's just keep going. If anybody needs a break, of course, you can walk away from your computer and come back. But let's just keep going since the momentum is there.
Yes, I agree. All right, so next we'll have Ms. Samantha Snagowski of American Institutes for Research, or AIR, as we call them. She's going to talk to us about the Data Hub, along with Ms. Femi Vance, who's going to talk about CQIP. We have opened the floor for you.
All right, great. Thank you. Let me just go ahead and get my PowerPoint set up here. And you can both hear me and see my PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's really good to be on the line with you this morning. I know we haven't chatted in a while. I hope everyone is doing okay. Femi and I would like to talk to you a little bit about a couple of things related to data collection and also quality improvement and professional development opportunities this year. Before we go ahead and do that, I think I know most of you on the line, but I do see a few folks who are new and just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce ourselves. My name is Samantha Snagowski. I'm a senior researcher here at AIR, and I am the project director for the statewide evaluation of the 21st century programs in South Carolina. And one thing that is, I guess, interesting or unique about me, you'll see a picture on your screen there of a beautiful maple tree with yellow leaves. One of the things that I enjoy during the fall is hunting. So actually this weekend will be my first weekend out, and that's an actual picture of where I will be. So I'm very excited about that. And before we get into some more content, I'll turn it over for Femi to introduce herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Sam, will you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Femi Vance, and I am a researcher with AIR, and I am based in San Diego. And I have a picture there of the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. I recently was on vacation and was able to take my son, my baby cousin, who is 9, and my mom and my dad to the safari park, masks and all. And our favorite part of that was seeing the gorillas play and interact with one another. I've been with AIR for about 3 years, and for this project, I work with the continuous quality improvement process. So I'm excited to virtually meet all of you.
Okay, thanks, Femi. A little bit about our agenda that we want to cover in the next several minutes. we do want to revisit the South Carolina 21st Century Support Site that we've created probably about 8 to 10 months ago now, and go through that, give folks a refresher. We demonstrated that, I think, on the last project directors meeting during the summer, but wanted to reacquaint everyone with that site and let everyone know what's available there in terms of supports, especially as we're navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. Femi will also take us through a conversation on what's on the horizon for continuous quality improvement and professional development opportunities. And then I'll talk a little bit about family engagement, what that has looked like in the past for the grantees in South Carolina, and how we navigate family engagement through COVID-19 as well. And then also give some updates on the Data Hub. We've got a couple of things that we have modified in there, especially as it relates to reporting during COVID-19 and different program approaches to that. So I'll walk through the specific updates that we have made for this year. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Femi and allow Femi to take control to walk us through the support site.
Thank you, Sam. I do not see, unfortunately, do not see it sharing my screen. Hold on one second.
I think you have to click the share screen. There we go.
All right. I hope that you all can see my screen. Welcome to the South Carolina 21st Century Support Site. This is a site that we made as being a one-stop shop where you all could get all the information that we hope would be helpful as you think about your data collection, as well as those who are participating in the continuous quality improvement process. We collaborate really closely with Joyce and her team to ensure that the most up-to-date information is available here. And we're able to make edits to the support site very quickly. So as things come up, we try to put them on so that you have relevant and timely information. This is just the home screen, and what you'll notice is we try to put anything events that are coming up this month. We're just entering into October, so we haven't put any October events up quite yet. And then there's some sites that we kind of think of as like hot links. So links to professional development, as well as some quick resources, particularly you'll notice around COVID-19, since that's top of mind for us these days. So that's the homepage. And I will, Sam, if you don't mind, would you put the link for the site in the chat box for folks?
Sure.
And thank you. And when you go at the top here are all the different topic areas that we have. And I just want to take a minute to like dive in a little deeper into each of them so you know what's available in each of these. So under the 21st CCLC guidance, what you'll see is just this landing page here is really broad guidance that you'll see from the U.S. Department of Ed, as well as South Carolina's Department of Ed, and some links from the After School Alliance. But when you dig deeper, what you'll see under like COVID-19 updates is the most up-to-date guidance around COVID-19 from South Carolina. And then there's additional organizations that are leaders in the field, obviously, for example, the CDC, the After School Alliance, that can also provide additional resources for you all. So that's the guidance section. And then data and reporting, this is where you'll really find all things that are Data Hub related. So for example, you'll see like what is the current reporting guidance. We'll even upload our PowerPoint. So for example, we'll likely upload the PowerPoint that Sam will share with you with the information later today, coming up here shortly. And then there's also just a quick link to the Data Hub. So if you're having problems getting there, you can always come here and click, and it will take you right there. There you go. And then finally, if you, I know sometimes folks need to know what are the results from our statewide evaluations, and we have uploaded those reports for you. So they're quickly accessible here. All right, and for those of you who have engaged in the continuous quality improvement process previously, these resources here probably look very familiar to you. For those who haven't, this is a good place to start if you're curious about what the continuous quality improvement process actually entails. So there's a landing page that just gives you a really quick overview. We have some tools. I just want to highlight really quickly that every training that we do around CQIP, we also put the recording as well as the presentations here. So even if you are not yet involved in CQIP, but you want to see the kind of supports that are offered, this is a place where you can poke around and learn some of that. And then if you have been participating and you wanted to be able to compare your data to your observational data to what others are doing in South Carolina, you can always find those reports here. So really fun stuff. And then in professional development, there's just pulling together, really it's just sort of a curated list of things that we think would be helpful as you're thinking about supporting your staff needs, what's emerging as training that would be helpful. So we have some key sites that we think have just a plethora of things that could be interesting. So the U for Youth, Beyond the Bell, which is developed by AIR, and the Center for Youth Program Quality. And the Center for Youth Program Quality, they developed the observation tool that we use in the continuous quality improvement process. So they're definitely a good place to start. We organized our professional development resources into sort of two buckets. So the first one is facilitating distance learning, since we know some of you are doing all virtual programming, some of you are doing a combination of those, and so wanted to be able to offer some things that would be helpful. So you can poke around here. And then the other one is around lesson planning and activity ideas. Just want to give you some sparks of like, what can we do with young people that will keep them engaged and learning? And so you can find those ideas here. And certainly last but not least, here you can contact anyone on the AIR team. So you'll see me and Sam listed, but we also have another colleague, Ariel, who helps us manage the site, and we can answer questions for you about any of the resources that you see here, and or if you have general comments about like, I want to know more about the CQIP, the continuous quality improvement process, we can also answer those. And then of course we have Joyce listed in case you need to contact her about a grant program question specifically. All right, I think that's it.
All right, thanks, Phoebe. I'm going to go ahead and take us back to our presentation. And Phoebe, can you confirm when you can see the presentation?
I can see it. Just waiting for you to get into presentation mode.
All right. And then Phoebe, if you wouldn't mind chatting a little bit about what's on the horizon for professional development and CQIP.
Yeah. If I wasn't explicit, continuous quality improvement is of CQIP, and typically in a typical year, what would happen is we would have started the continuous quality improvement process already, but it's no surprise to you all that this is not a typical year, and so because it's atypical, we really are thinking about how can we be redesigning the quality supports so that they're useful, they recognize where you all are. So we want to continue to support program delivery. We want to make sure that staff feel prepared and ready to be with young people, and we want to give you all an opportunity to stay connected to one another. And so instead of diving into the CQIP process, which that circle here really describes, typically we would start with a preparation phase and then jump into evaluating, doing observations. Instead, what we'd like to propose for the fall is to host a 21st CCLC learning community from October to December. What that would include is a 1-hour webinar a month. And then you would also have access to pre-recorded training sessions. AIR has a Beyond the Bell series, and we have a Beyond the Bell channel with some pre-recorded sessions, things like connecting to the school day, developing youth skill building, assessing staff needs. So those are just some of the topics that come to mind. And we could, if you have the time, be able to like leverage those pre-recorded training sessions as part of the learning community. And then we really want to be able to hear from you about what you need, what training topics are really rising to the surface. So there's certainly an opportunity for you to share with us what those things are so that we can be, again, responsive to what you need and change the topics of those webinars to make sure that you're getting something valuable. So to that end, we've developed a very short 3-question survey that asks if you think this would be, feasible for you to be a part of the fall learning community, and also asking you generally, what are some topics that are of interest, including, the ones that I've mentioned, but also asking you to just share things that aren't on that list. And I'll pause there and just to say that Sam has put in the chat box the link to that poll. So if you could just take, maybe 1 or 2 minutes to be able to complete the poll, that would be wonderful. And wanted to also invite right now in the chat box if you all have any questions and or comments about the continuous quality improvement process, the fall learning community, or even suggestions about topics that you'd like to explore in the learning community. I'm going to take the silence as positive that you all are filling out the poll. All right. Okay, Sam, I think I'll turn it over to you as folks continue to drop in their answers.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Femi. And as Femi mentioned, we're here if you have any questions about the upcoming supports. We will be chatting with the South Carolina team in terms of the results of this survey, just to see where we're at in terms of interest and feasibility to do these webinars every month during the fall. So we'll take that information once it's provided and be communicating with you all about what the plan is for that. Get back to my PowerPoint here. Okay, so we do want to talk a little bit about family engagement, and especially as it relates to how we approach this during this program year, since it is so atypical. And I just wanted to reground us in the ESSA legislation language regarding family engagement. So under the legislation, there are 3 purposes for the 21st Century Program. The third one being that it is intended to offer the families of students served by the centers opportunities for literacy and other related educational development. So it is in the legislation, and we do want to bring it up here just because over the last couple of years, I think there's been a little bit of confusion about what's intended by the adult or family participation and how we record that information. So it is an expectation of your grant to be offering services to students and families. And the way that we have collected that information in the past has been through the Data Hub, where much like the youth attendance, we enroll our parent or adult family member participants into the enrollment page of the Data Hub. And then we're asked to report on the attendance or participation of those adult family members every month over the course of the year. And whether or not during each month they participated in the following types of activities that are on your screen. Now, having said that, we know that because this is a very strange year moving forward, that your family engagement activities might look a little bit different than what they have in the past. Of course, you still might be able to offer some of these activities to some degree, but especially if you are all virtual or if you're in a hybrid format, you might not be able to offer these activities in the same way. So we just wanted to illustrate some things that we're thinking about in terms of how we are collecting that information. In relation to COVID-19, we actually partnered with System-Wide Solutions over the course of the late spring and early summer to conduct some project director interviews on the response to COVID-19. And one of the things that we asked about in those interviews was related to how we're keeping our families engaged. And generally, we found that programs were operating as kind of a connection point to other supports and services, such as financial support, access to food, counseling, and medical access, such as the COVID-19 testing. So there was a greater emphasis placed on making sure that families had access to kind of those basic needs. So that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of family engagement over the course of this current program year. Of course, we can still be offering these types of activities to the extent that we can, but we feel that a lot of the supports and services that you might be offering this year might fall under that other category and be reflective of, some of the things that we found during those project director interviews. So we just wanted to note that this is something that is certainly on our mind, and we really want to think about how we can capture all the good work that you are doing around this. South Carolina team, I didn't know if there's anything that you want to add about family engagement before we open it up to questions.
No, there's nothing to add at this point, Sam.
And I will pause just really quickly to see if there are any questions in the chat box around family engagement. As I get into the Data Hub updates conversation, I will demonstrate some of the changes that we're thinking about or how we can capture this information. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the Data Hub updates. So I know some of you have been asking about when we will open the Data Hub for the current program year, and our hope is to do so in the next couple of weeks. As I said, I've been making some updates and changes that will help us better capture what programs are doing related to the different types of formatting and programming delivery that we might have over the course of this year. So right now we're in the process of finalizing those updates, completing testing. All of this will be moved to our production site. Right now it's in our testing site next week. And then we can start pulling forward the information from last year in terms of our enrollment rosters for grantees who are returning, and then making updates to our sub-grantee and center list. So the hope is to have all of those changes completed in our production site next week, and then probably open up the system the following week. But we will certainly let you know when that is available. I'm going to go ahead and move us into a demonstration of some of the areas that we have updated and talk about those a little bit. Let's see here, let me get into. Okay, so just to know, I'm on our testing site right now. This is our designation for the testing site. So if we're copying and pasting any links here, it will not work for you all until we move this over into the production site. But I'm going to go ahead and log us in and talk about the three major areas where we have made updates to the system, those being operations, activities, and partners. And then I will circle back to the adult attendance reporting in light of our previous conversation. So most of you should be familiar with this if you're a returning grantee. The three areas that we have updated, as I said, is general operations, activities, and partners. So let me go ahead and hop into the general operations. So in the past, there have been 2 pages related to general operations. And we've kind of switched the order of these pages so that all of our logistics, our operational logistics information is on that first page, and then we move into some additional questions about program enrollment policies, recruitment approaches, things like that. The other thing that we have done on the operations page in order to make this in better alignment with our federal reporting requirements, which requires us to report in each of the summer, fall, and spring terms, as we split the operation into those 3 terms. So first and foremost, we have to say yes or no, did we offer programming during this term? And then there are a series of questions that we have to fill out about each of those terms if we did operate in them. The thing that I do want to point out here is that we've added a question to each of these terms that allow us to understand your program delivery model within that term. So it's asking us to select whether or not we did an in-person only format, virtual only format, or a hybrid format. And again, that question is present in each of the terms. So we'll need to complete that for each term, and especially as change happens over the course of the terms, that allows us to understand how the program delivery model shifts and fluctuates, especially with what's going on related to the pandemic. So that's one of the changes that we have made. And then, of course, I haven't completed all of my information here, so it's telling me I can't move on. Let me go into one that I have complete just to show you. And so then our questions related to goals, recruitment approaches, and enrollment policies have been shifted to the second page. This back to our data submission page. And let me just highlight our activities section. So there are a couple of changes that we have made here. We have updated the activities section to allow for input of information to any adult family member participation or activities that you might be offering. Previously, these were all student-related activities, and so we wanted to be able to understand a little bit more about the types of activities that you might be offering to adult family members. So it operates in the same way where we add a new activity. Let me just here. And so a form will pop up after I add a new activity where I need to enter some information. There's a question that we've added here that allows us to select whether or not the activity I've just created is a student activity or an adult family member activity. And based on my selection here, a series of questions will pop up. So they're different for students and as they are from adult family members. On this page, we have also added a question where we can select the delivery model for that specific activity. So for those of you who are maybe doing kind of a hybrid format, you know, the delivery model for specific activities might change if overall you're incorporating a hybrid format. So we want to understand a little bit more about for each specific activity, how is it being delivered to students or their family members? And there are questions here that we'll need to fill out for each of our activities. But if I go back, you can see I've added that parenting classes activity. It tells me it's an adult activity. And so again, we will be reporting the activities in the 3 different terms, summer, fall, and spring. For this particular center, because I did not select that I had a summer program, it's not going to ask me to report on summer programming here. That is the change that we have made to the activities section. And let me just quickly show you the information update. We've made a few updates here, one of which is indicating whether or not the partner is a primary partner. So in your grant application, we typically have to indicate who our primary partner is. So we've added this question here. And we've also added a few questions to understand a little bit more about how the programming, how the partner is contributing to programming. So we want to understand all of the ways that your partner might be contributing to your program, and then just understand the estimated dollar value of those services. Doesn't have to be exact, it just has to be an estimate of the value of those particular services from that partner. This is where we indicate if we have a primary, if this is a primary partner. Just to note that we're only allowed to select one primary partner. And if I have more than one primary partner selected, it will tell me so, and I have to go in and make changes accordingly. And the last piece we've added is just a brief description of how this partner is contributing to the goals of your program. So we can only gather so much information from what's listed here in these pre-populated fields, but really want to try to understand the true value of your partnership here. So that's one of the changes that we've made to partners. And before I get into the adult activities, well, actually, I'll get into that right now. So the adult activities or the adult participation, when we were talking about how we would record attendance in some of those other categories that we might be taking a look at, we've got our typical categories here that we've asked in the past, but as we noted, there are some other things that you might be doing, especially as part of the COVID-19 response, where it might not fit into any of these categories. In which case, we would hope that you would fill in the other category. And the way that we can understand a little bit more about what other means is by the activity information that you're putting into the activities section. So when we get into the activities information, I have this opportunity to select the category. So that allows us to tie the activity type to parent participation and adult family member participation. And then just generally, getting back to kind of our timeline for opening the system up for the next reporting period. As I mentioned before, we need to kind of pull forward or roll over information. The only information that we'll be pulling forward from the prior year, if you're a returning grantee, will be your youth enrollment rosters. Our goal in doing so is to give you a list to start from for the current program year if you have returning youth to your program, and then go through a process of cleaning that up. In the past, we've typically rolled forward information related to operations and to partners as well. But just because of the changes that we have made, they've been fairly substantial to those sections. We'll ask that all programs go in and kind of resubmit that information. Also helps us think about, how this is potentially very different from years in the past. So I think that is all I have related to the Data Hub. Looks like I have a question in the chat box here. Is other where you would enter basic needs services that were provided to a family? Yes. So that's where we would go and say, yes, this adult family member participated in this other type of activity. And then the activity section is where you could really define what that other might mean. So that will give us a good sense there. And Joyce, that is all I have at the moment, but I'm gonna take a look at the chat box and see if anything else comes in. Again, if you have any questions related to the Data Hub or to the professional development and CQIP work, feel free to reach out to myself and Femi. We're happy to assist you. And I'm not seeing anything else that's coming into. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Joyce, to close us out.
Okay, thank you so much. Shonda, do you need to make an announcement about the evaluation before I do my closing remarks?
Yes. Samantha, if you'll unshare your content so I can pull mine up quickly. Can everyone see that?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me see here. Okay. All right, I see it's on now. Okay. Yes, right here we'll have our evaluation form. There's a QR code, and there's also a link. The link I will have to send via email, as well as the QR code. If you have a phone that you can take a picture of the QR code, it will pull up the evaluation on your mobile device. If you prefer not to do that, again, the email will be sent out later today so that you can complete the evaluation form and get that back to us. And if there's any problem, just let us know.
Okay, thank you, Shonda.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I do have a few other things to share with you, but thank you so much for hanging in there with us today. I hope you found, what we presented to you to be useful. I do want to let you know that we will expect an email from us next week, hopefully early next week. We'll send you a copy of the Project Director's Handbook. Typically, you would get a hard copy, but this year is different. So you get an email version of that, an email version of the calendar, as well as the monitoring schedule And then we'll also include your PowerPoints from today. On the calendar, you'll see that I wanted to just highlight that the deadline to code all of your students in PowerSchool is next week, October 7th. So I'm telling you that now before you get the calendar. If you haven't already done so, please code all of your 21st century students in PowerSchool by October 7th. And then next week, October 8th, next Thursday, we're going to hold a similar training to today, but it's primarily for the brand new project directors. I know, a lot of you are probably overwhelmed by today, but we'll, kind of move a little slower next week. So if you have a new project director, or if you are a new project director, please let your 21st century program manager here in the office know so that we can send you out an invite, and then we'll, send you out an invite. And I think it's going to be next Thursday, probably the same time, 9:30, but we will include all of that information. And so we will ask Samantha to come back so that she can go over the data hub and information for those brand new people that have never don't even know what data hub is, so that they can, get enrolled and kind of get familiar with it. And then we'll have someone also from our grants accounting office to kind of walk you through the GAPS process of, putting in your information to get reimbursed for your claims and such. So at this time, if we have any additional questions that may not have gotten answered, I'll ask the team, since you all have been answering your questions, thank you so much via the chat box. If there are any questions, and we've asked, our 4 peer project directors to kind of hang around as well. If you have any questions for either, Janice Sargent, Nikki Kalk, Donna Paget, or Miko Hendricks that didn't get answered, or questions about anything, now is your time. If you don't have any questions, then certainly you're free to leave. The meeting's adjourned. Stay safe. You have a great weekend, and thank you so much for coming. Otherwise, if you want to hang on a little while longer and ask some more questions, that now is your time. So you can either continue to put them in the chat box, or raise your hand, or just unmute yourself and ask your question. Again, from the team, thank you.
There's a question in the chat box, Joyce, of what is Donna Paget's contact information?
Okay, Donna, can you share that, please?
Yes, you just want my email information?
Yeah, email is fine.
Okay, do I need to just write it in the chat box?
You can also state it as well. I don't know who else needs it, but that could be helpful.
It is D Paget at lex3.org.
Okay. Thank you. Did I see another question, Latasha, that came through the chat box?
Yes. Let's see. Just for clarity for Ms. Paget, that's DPADGETT at lex3.org.
That is correct.
Okay. So I put it in the chat box for those that are looking for that with the correct spelling. There was another question. What are some strategies others are using to recruit teachers in the COVID era?
Any of our 4 can answer this.
This is Janice Sargent with Greenville County Schools. I have been reaching out individually to teachers within the school that I know have certain expertise, such as our Science and Innovation Lab person, and asking them if they could, do something, even if it's one afternoon a week or once a month, but something to provide some enrichment activities. And actually got really good response. It seems like everybody's coming together as a community to try to help the kids. So sometimes it's just as simple as just reaching out to them individually and asking them if they're willing to come on board.
Thank you.
Latasha, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
That question again was, what are some other strategies that you're using to recruit teachers during the COVID era?
We've just been, talking with teachers and asking we have a social emotional learning teacher here in our school, and, getting, working with her and our guidance counselor on getting information of things that we can share with families of, how to work with their children during these times and these stressful times. So we've been working with them and they've been very helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's another question in the chat box. If we don't get enough students to start on Monday, October 5th, can we start in January?
I'm not going to answer that question now. Please send that question via email to your program manager, because we definitely have to do that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, Arlene, you asked the question, what about students who are enrolled in e-learning? Do we serve all students who qualify? You can unmute yourself if you want to give a little bit more explanation to your question.
Yes, thank you. Because of the pandemic, I know that several school districts like ours, they have created e-learning where that the students are virtual for the entire year. And I have had questions from project directors about, well, what do we do? Do we serve them virtually all year long as well? Or do we require them to come to school to participate? And I said, this is a brand new time. I really don't know. So that's why that I'm posing the question.
Miss Arlene, we allow those who are in e-learning to be with us in virtual. Our after-school program is virtual, but in January when we go back into the school, we still offer that opportunity for the parents who still are letting their children do e-learning the whole year.
So you do have a virtual component then to serve those students, even
Yes.
when you go back face to face?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'd also like to add to that, this is Janice Sargent. Some of our students chose to, be virtual at the beginning of the year, and our school now is saying that students cannot change their mind. A lot of the parents were trying to change their mind when they started revamping things, and that the school just can't handle it based on their planning at the beginning of the year. So we're going to continue to serve those kids virtually all year for support, because now they do not have the option of coming back to school this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
All right, we have another question for the 4 presenters. Can you provide any suggestions on increasing student enrollment during COVID-19?
I personally believe for us anyway, it's been reaching out to those parents individually. I'm taking, normally I have a waiting list, so I'm not able to do this, but this year I've reached out to individual teachers for any openings and had them recommend students to the program that they know really need the help, and then reaching out to the parents individually and telling them all the things we have in place for their child's safety and all the things that we're doing. I believe that's helped a lot in just reassuring parents that we're doing everything that they do during the school day as far as safety goes. But we do have a lot of small group and in some cases individual instruction and help that we can provide them, and them understanding that it's a great resource has been very helpful.
This is Donna Padgett with Lexington 3. We have gotten our enrollment through our teacher recommendation and from, testing results and working with our assistant principal and our interventionist and curriculum coordinator at our school. And between that and contacting parents who want their children to have the extra help, we've done very well so far.
Okay. Any other questions, Latasha, that you see?
There are currently no more questions in the chat box that we have.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, we will. Oh, that's a question.
There's one. Okay, that is from one of my programs. I will contact you directly to talk about that specifically, only because that's related to a direct program question.
Okay. All right. If there aren't any other questions, then we will adjourn, and we'll say again, thank you all so much. Thank you, speakers. We might call on one or two of you again next week if you don't mind talking to our brand new project director. So kind of stay tuned. But thank you, team. Great job. And thank you all. Have a great weekend and continue to stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.